What does success look like when nobody is watching? Not the highlight reel, not the podcast clip. I mean the quiet moments, the private decisions, the stuff you do when you could get away with doing less. That question hits because it basically exposes the difference between performance and character. And it's been a big theme in Tony Robbins' recent conversations, especially the idea that your real life is what happens behind closed doors. Today, we're stitching together a few threads that are all colliding at once. Personal integrity, entrepreneurship, mental health, and then this bigger world layer, AI, geopolitics, investing, and even what's happening in health policy and homeownership.
It sounds like a lot, but it's actually one big topic. How do you stay grounded and make good decisions in a world that's loud, fast, and constantly changing?
Let's start with that private definition of success, because it's easy to measure success in public. Money, titles, followers, accolades, those all come with scoreboards. But private success is trickier. It's more like, are you proud of your standards when nobody's clapping?
And are you becoming the kind of person who can handle the life you're trying to build? That's the part people forget. They want the outcome, but they skip the identity required to sustain it. One way Robbins frames it is integrity as alignment, not perfection. Alignment. Your values and your behavior matching up more often than not. Because the moment you build a life that depends on being on all the time, you're borrowing from your future.
And eventually, the debt comes due. It shows up as burnout, resentment, impulsive decisions, or that weird feeling of, why am I successful and still dissatisfied? So let's make this practical. If someone listening is thinking, okay, cool philosophy, but what do I actually do? Here are a few private success check-ins. What do you repeatedly do when you're tired? How do you treat people who can't do anything for you? What do you do with temptation when the consequences are unlikely? And here's one that always gets me. What promises do you make to yourself and then quietly break? Because you can break a promise to yourself and nobody sends an email about it. No one knows. But which brings us to business. Robbins has been pushing 3 core beliefs for business owners, like internal operating rules that actually carry you through the messy middle. Let's translate those beliefs into plain language. Belief number 1. You have to believe you can learn your way through anything. Not that you already know, not that you're naturally gifted, but that you're the kind of person who figures it out. That's huge because entrepreneurship is basically a long series of unfamiliar problems. If your self-concept is, I need certainty before I move, you'll stall forever. But if your self-concept is, I adapt, you keep moving.
Belief number 2. Your results are shaped by what you consistently do, not what you occasionally do. People fall in love with intensity, but businesses are built on rhythm.
This is where integrity circles back. Because consistency is private, it's unsexy, it's boring. The system you follow when nobody is rewarding you yet, that's the engine.
And belief number 3. You have to believe you can create value at a level that the market will reward. That sounds obvious, but it changes how you behave. Instead of chasing validation, you chase usefulness. Instead of asking, how do I look? You ask, how do I serve? If you're building a business, that belief removes a lot of drama. It turns setbacks into data. It turns rejection into direction. Because if value is the game, then feedback is a gift, not an insult.
Okay, but we can't talk about mindset without talking about relationships and mental health, because this is where people get stuck, especially that feeling of being disconnected from the people you love. And disconnected doesn't always mean fighting. Sometimes it's worse. It's the slow drift. You're in the same house, the same relationship, the same friend group, but emotionally it feels like everybody is on a different island.
A lot of the modern problem is attention. Your phone isn't neutral. It trains your brain to crave novelty and quick hits. Then you sit down with your partner or your best friend, and real life feels slower, less stimulating. So you interpret slowness as lack of love. And on top of that, people are carrying anxiety, financial pressure, and this constant background noise of world events. So the nervous system is already overloaded. Connection becomes another task instead of a refuge. So what do? One strategy that shows up again and again. You build rituals that create closeness without needing a big emotional speech. 10 minutes of real talk at the end of the day. A weekly walk. Phones out of the room during meals. Small agreements that build safety.
And when it comes to depression, the conversation often turns toward the idea of taking control of your mind. That phrase can sound harsh, like, just snap out of it. That's not the point. Right. It's more like if your mind is a room, you don't have to let every thought grab the microphone. You can learn to notice patterns, interrupt spirals, and shift state. That's not denying reality. It's managing your focus.
A simple tool. Ask better questions. If your brain keeps asking, what's wrong with me? You'll get answers that deepen the hole. But if you ask, What's one thing I can do in the next 10 minutes that helps? Your brain starts producing exits. And even if the step is tiny, drink water, step outside, message a friend, schedule an appointment, it's a vote for life. That's the mindset angle, not pretending you're fine, but refusing to be helpless. Now let's zoom out. There's been a shift in Robbins' content lately where he's not only talking about internal transformation, but also about the external landscape, AI and geopolitics, and how it changes investing and security.
And this is where people get nervous because AI gets presented as either magic or doom. But the practical reality is it's a force multiplier. It makes strong systems stronger and weak systems more fragile. So for investors, it's not just what stocks go up. It's what industries get restructured, what jobs change, what countries gain leverage, where does risk concentrate. And geopolitics matters because supply chains, energy, and security all affect markets.
Yeah, the game isn't just fundamentals anymore, it's also resilience. Companies and countries are being evaluated on their ability to operate through disruption, tech disruption, political disruption, and disruptions in trust. And paradoxically, this brings us back to personal integrity. Because when the world changes fast, people cling to certainty. That's when scams increase, when panic decisions happen, when people chase hot tips instead of building a strategy.
So the internal work isn't separate from the external world. Your emotional regulation shows up in your portfolio. Your ability to delay gratification shows up in your business decisions. Your identity shows up in your risk tolerance. There's also an interesting career arc piece in Robbins' recent material, looking back from the 1980s to now, because it shows how the message evolves with the era. Back then, self-improvement was often packaged as raw motivation. Push harder, be more confident, take massive action. And that still has value. But now the conversation includes neuroscience, trauma awareness, systems thinking, and how environment shapes behavior. It's like the evolution from just change your life to let's understand your patterns, your physiology, your relationships, and your incentives. The toolset got more sophisticated because people realized willpower alone doesn't carry you forever. Okay, let's pivot to the news layer in all this, because the world is giving people plenty of reasons to feel unsettled, especially around health policy and money.
One headline. RFK Jr. has been pushing for spending cuts at major health agencies in a future budget plan. Regardless of where you land politically, the question for everyday people is, what happens to public health capacity, research pace, and oversight when budgets shrink?
And on the flip side, there's a separate push coming from an executive order asking the FDA to accelerate reviews for certain psychedelic drugs. That's a big deal because it signals momentum toward new mental health treatment options.
People hear psychedelics and they jump to extremes. But the real question is, can these treatments, under strict medical guidance, help with conditions that current approaches aren't solving well enough? And then you ask the systems question. If approval gets faster, do we also keep safety standards strong, practitioner training rigorous, and access equitable? Speed is powerful, but speed without guardrails can create a different set of problems.
Now, let's talk about relationships again, but through money. Because one of the most telling trends right now is couples choosing financial independence inside their partnership. More than half of couples keeping at least some accounts separate is a cultural shift. Some people see that and think it means less trust. Others see it as healthier boundaries.
I think it depends on the intention. If separate accounts are a way to hide, that's trouble. If they're a way to reduce friction, preserve autonomy, or manage different spending styles, it can actually lower conflict. And it goes right back to that private success theme. What agreements are you making when nobody else is watching? Are you being honest about debt, purchases, goals? Money doesn't just measure wealth, it measures alignment.
Let's hit housing because it's on everyone's mind. Mortgage rates have dipped a bit, around the mid-6% range for a 30-year fixed, marking a recent low. That little change can pull people off the fence and back into the rent versus buy debate.
But at the same time, economists are warning rates might stay higher for longer because inflation is stubborn. So you've got this weird moment where people feel teased by a dip, but the longer-term forecast is still, don't assume it's going back to the old days.
So what's the mindset play here? Don't anchor to the past. A lot of people are still emotionally shopping in 2021, expecting a totally different interest rate world. But today's decision has to be based on today's reality. Your cash flow, your timeline, your stability.
And credit matters a lot more in this environment. Maintaining a very good credit score can translate into huge savings across the life of a mortgage, tens of thousands of dollars. That's not motivational fluff, that's math. Which is almost poetic, right? We're talking about integrity and private standards. And then here's a concrete example. The disciplined, boring habit of paying on time and managing debt literally buys you options later.
And homeownership is changing too. The typical first-time buyer age climbing toward 40 tells you how affordability, education costs, and career paths are reshaping adulthood. Plus, more women are looking at real estate as a primary wealth-building tool and a way to close pay gaps over time. That's not just a housing story, it's a long-range strategy story. So if we tie everything together, private success, business beliefs, mental health, AI and markets, policy shifts, and money at home, what's the through line? The through line is that mindset isn't a poster on the wall. Mindset is the set of decisions you make under pressure. It's how you respond when you feel disconnected. It's whether you build systems instead of chasing moods. It's whether your values show up when nobody is clapping.
And in a world where the external scoreboard is getting weirder, rates up, tech accelerating, politics unpredictable, the most stable advantage is still internal. Clarity, consistency, and character.
So here's the closing challenge for the week. Pick 1 inch behind closed doors standard to raise, not 10. 1. Maybe it's telling the truth faster. Maybe it's keeping a promise to yourself. Maybe it's a 10-minute connection ritual with someone you love. Maybe it's checking your credit and making a plan.
And then ask yourself, if nobody ever applauded this change, would I still do it? Because if the answer is yes, you're building the kind of success that actually lasts.
That's the episode. Wherever you're listening from, thanks for spending the time with us. Keep it real in public, but even more importantly, keep it real in private. Please like, subscribe, and join us at I Am Healthy Money. Life has its ups and downs, but you're not alone. From 10 to 110, we're in this together, right here, right now. We love ya.